When you think of science, what comes to mind? Probably this, like relentless march towards some final capital T truth, right? In school, they taught us the scientific method was this neat little recipe. But, if you actually follow science, the reality is way messier. And honestly, it's so much more interesting that way. So let's get right into it, because today we're going to flip the script on what the whole scientific enterprise is really all about. So let me just throw this out there. It might sound a little crazy at first. What if science isn't about finding the truth, like at all? What if its real power, the thing that makes it so special, is something else entirely? Seriously, stick with me here, because this idea, well, it changes pretty much everything. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we've got to start by tearing down a huge, and I mean huge, misconception. You could almost call it science's biggest, worst-kept secret. You know the common picture of science, right? It's like this giant vending machine. You put a question in, pull a lever, and clunk, out pops an absolute final truth. Gravity? Fact. The Earth orbiting the sun? Fact. And those are truths, right? Well, kinda. The thing is, thinking of science as just a fact factory, it's not totally wrong, but man, it misses the most exciting part of the whole thing. It misses the main event. And that right there brings us to the absolute core of what we're talking about today. The real secret, the real magic of science isn't in the answers themselves. It's in how it gets them. It's the chase, the method. That's the whole message. So here's the bottom line. The scientific worldview, it's not a belief system built on a stack of unchangeable truths. No. Its foundation is the method itself, that tough, repeatable, open to everyone process of searching. The real gold isn't in finding the treasure chest at the end, it's in having a reliable map for the journey. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. The old way of thinking sees truth as a final destination. You get there, you plant your flag, you're done. Put the trophy on the shelf. But the real picture? It's a journey. It's a dynamic, always moving process. It's not about owning a perfect, shiny product. It's about being part of the process, the endless, amazing process of building, breaking, and rebuilding our understanding of everything. Okay, to make this idea even clearer, let's put science side by side with another huge quest for knowledge, philosophy. So, for thousands of years, philosophy has been asking this huge, profound question: what is truth? It tackles it with deep thought, with logic. But then science comes along and makes this one tiny genius pivot. It asks a much more practical question. Yeah, but how can we test this? And boom, that changes everything. That shift from just thinking about something to creating a process that anyone can repeat, that was the revolution. It took knowledge out of one person's head and put it into a shared space where we can all check the work. But hang on. It's not like the method is some kind of magic wand. We have to be honest here. Championing the process doesn't mean it's perfect or that it can do everything. In fact, one of the best things about the scientific process is that it's actually pretty honest about its own limits. And here's the big but, the big caveat. Even though the method is so important, you can't just use it like a checklist to perfectly separate what is science from what is non-science. The line can get really blurry. Philosophers actually have a name for this. They call it the demarcation problem. And it just goes to show that figuring out what counts as science takes more than just following a recipe. Yeah, let that one sink in for a second. This quote really hits the nail on the head. The method is king, but it's not the whole kingdom. At the end of the day, science is a human thing, and figuring out where its borders are, well, that takes real judgment and context, not just a simple rule book. So what's the big deal? Why does this whole process versus product thing even matter? Well, because once you really get it, once it clicks, it gives you a totally new and way more powerful way to think about, well, everything. It really gives us this new toolkit for thinking. Number one, we learn to value the process. We start to appreciate the hard work, the skepticism, the journey, not just the flashy headline at the end. Number two, we learn to embrace change. See, if science is a process, then changing our minds isn't a failure, it's a success. It means the system is working, it's a feature, not a bug. And finally, number three, it encourages us to ask better questions in our own lives, to look for evidence, to apply that same rigor way outside of a science lab. And that really leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If we stop seeing science as a treasure map to some fixed place called truth and start seeing it as a compass, a tool for an endless journey of exploration, well, that's pretty exciting, isn't it? If we focus on making the compass better and better, Just imagine where it's going to lead us next. What do you think is out there?